folks, and welcome to the CBC radio show. Today, our special guest is J.S. Woodsworth. He is a leader in the Winnipeg General Strike, and now he is coming all the way from the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation in Ottawa. Good evening, everyone. So, Mr. Woodsworth, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, growing up, I was the oldest of 6 children. My siblings, parents, and I grew up in Etobicoke. My father was a Methodist minister, and I followed his footsteps. After studying in England, I returned to Canada, to Winnipeg, and became a minister. Also, I married my beautiful Lucy Hales in the year 1903. For 6 years, I had been a mission worker. I worked with poor and immigrant families. During this time, I also campaigned for compulsory education, juvenile courts, construction of playgrounds, the important things. I started to question the church. When the First World War started, I was asked to support conscription. In simple terms, I was strongly opposed to it. I decided to head back to British Columbia to see my family, where I helped organize the Federated Liberal Party of British Columbia. In 1919, I set out on a tour of Western Canada and arrived in Winnipeg, just as the general strike was underway. I immediately began presenting addresses at strike meetings, and, well, I have been politically involved ever since.
Wow, that's interesting, Mr. Woodsworth. Could you tell us about how the Winnipeg General Strike initially started?
Let me think about that. Wow, I was a little boy back then. Anyway, 13 years ago, on May the 1st, we members of the Winnipeg Building Trade Union went on strike when our employers refused to increase our wages. When there was no settlement, our union decided to call a citywide strike.
And who specifically was involved in the strike?
Well, there were postal workers, firefighters, and police officers involved, and factories and stores were closed. And city streetcars, they were stopped. However, the necessary services of food and dairy product delivery were excluded from the strike.
So you said that the police went on strike, but what happened to the safety of the citizens?
Well, the police were fired by the government law, and the government brought in special police officers, as well as the RCMP, to help keep things in order.
What happened to the workers who went on strike?
Well, the government ordered the strikers to go back to work, or they would end up losing their jobs. Even immigration laws were changed so that any striker who was an immigrant would be deported in an instant.
So you all went back to work, or what?
Well, not right away.
Then what happened?
Well, at this point, it got pretty ugly.
How so?
Well, you see, some strike leaders were arrested soon after the Royal Northwest Mounted Police, also known as the RNWMP, charged into the protest, which injured up to 100 people and took the lives of 2 workers.
Wow, that's intense. Must be a significant day for y'all.
Sure was. It's now known as Bloody Saturday because of all the violence.
So when did you guys go back to work?
On June 25th, exactly 6 weeks after the strike had begun. We were all afraid of losing our jobs. Some of us were fired, and others were forced to sign agreements not to join a union.
After all this, did you finally get what you wanted?
Yes and no. One of the strike leaders was deported, and others are imprisoned. Also, for the past couple years, union membership dropped as unemployment rose. On the other hand, the Royal Commission found that the strikers had engaged in peaceful protest, and that the strike was not a conspiracy to overthrow the government.
So the strike paid off?
Well, not only that, but the law soon required employers to recognize the rights of workers to bargain collectively through a union as a result of the strike.
Is it safe to say, Mr. Woodsworth, that the Winnipeg General Strike is a historically significant event?
Definitely. It began a new era of political involvement for workers. Several of the strike leaders, I being one, sparked an interest in pursuing a political career.
Well, there you have it, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Woodsworth. Now don't change the stations just yet, folks, because our next guest speaker is John Queen, the mayor of Winnipeg.